Or here we go. It's all yours.
I'll share my screen here. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Awesome.
Got it.
All right, well, today we're talking about introversion, and I know that some people in driving pursuits may be introverts, probably mostly extroverts though. I think in general in the population, there are slightly more extroverts than introverts, and this is a pretty social group, so maybe even less, but I have tips today for introverts to thrive in business, but also I have tips for extroverts to help you engage and work better with introverts. So this is really more of a presentation about cooperation and working together with different personality types and just being a better colleague and more helpful. So I thought we would do just a quick little definition type thing about extroverts and introverts. So extroverts tend to gain their energy from external things, social interactions. They often are the ones who are thriving in group settings. They actually enjoy networking, and they are more inclined to express their thoughts and ideas verbally. So they are like external processors. So they're often the ones who are processing information by talking it out with someone and saying it out loud. Introverts, on the other hand, gain their energy from being alone. They gain energy from doing internal reflection. They often are the ones who find social interactions more draining. So they a lot of times prefer quiet one-on-one conversations or even just being alone for solo activities. So they also tend to be the ones that process information by thinking deeply before they speak. So they're not as external of a processor. So often they're the ones where you're like, did you have something to say? Because they may not volunteer that information. We're thinking. Okay, so I hear these things a lot when I'm talking about introversion. I myself am an introvert, and so I hear these things a lot, and I just wanted to clear up some of the misconceptions that I have heard. So one is that introverts are shy. Shyness is a different trait. So it's not the same as introversion. So some introverts may be shy, but not all. Shy means that you have discomfort or anxiety in social situations, whereas introversion is all about how you gain your energy and process information. So it's not that we're shy and afraid of like being around people. The next one is introverts dislike socializing. This can be true again, but introverts often enjoy socializing. I know I do, but they just may prefer smaller groups or more intimate, more meaningful interactions. They may find large gatherings and like kind of small talk more draining because they prefer deeper conversations with their friends. I was always the kid that had like a very close, tight-knit group of just a few friends rather than being the one who had tons and tons of friends. Introverts aren't leaders. Introverts can be highly effective leaders, just like anyone. They often excel in leadership roles, in fact, because of their ability to listen well, to think critically and make thoughtful decisions. How about introverts lack confidence? They may appear more reserved, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they lack confidence. Again, they might, but they may just express their confidence in more quiet, kind of understated ways, or maybe they just don't come across as confident in a large group setting, but you get them in the right setting and they're just fine. And the last one I have is that introverts don't speak up. Sometimes they take more time to formulate our thoughts and ideas before we speak. So that doesn't mean we don't have anything to say. It might mean that we're just not ready to say it yet. And so sometimes we have to be prompted more than an extrovert would. All that makes sense? Any others?
No, that makes sense.
Okay, so now I'm going to go through some strengths that I came up with. Introverts are often thoughtful decision makers, great listeners. They're the ones who oftentimes people will travel by their desk and talk to them because they know that the introvert is going to be the person who listens well and is a very active listener and pays attention. Their introspective nature can foster creativity. They may excel in creative problem solving and innovative thinking if you give them the time and space to do it. Fun fact, once tried out for Jeopardy! And I got to go, I made it past the first round and I got to go to Memphis to see if I could move on to the next round. And what I learned was that when I was put on a clock, I couldn't do it. I'm not a fast thinker. I'm a slow thinker. I like to write. I like to process slowly. Jeopardy! Was not for me because I was put on the spot and I had to think of the answer way quicker than what I was ready to do. Introverts are often very comfortable working independently. That can be really good in a lot of jobs. Their calm nature can make them good at resolving conflicts. I think we're often good at finding common ground between different people. And we value deep, meaningful relationships. We can build really strong and enduring connections with our colleagues, coworkers, clients, friends. We're good relationship builders. And mentorship, coaching roles, we're often very good at those. That's another one of those one-on-one kind of things that we tend to excel at. Okay, here are our challenges. And so many jobs involve all of these things. And so this is why you sometimes get some of those misconceptions about introverts. Oh, introverts just don't like hanging out with people. They're shy. They're kind of rude. Rude. Oh, I should have added that one. I've heard that a lot. Oh, she's rude. She thinks she's better than everyone. No, I just don't want to talk.
I wish people just like took a second to think about that sometimes. Like, do you know that person, or do you just automatically assume because they don't let everything fly out of your mouth that they, it's like that moment of just take a pause and see if maybe they're like, you can tell when somebody is thinking, right? And I think that's such a cue for some people. Like, please pay attention to body language. There's a difference in being rude and watching somebody actually process.
True. I think that's very true.
I completely agree. I have an employee that it just infuriates me that she gets accused a lot. She's an amazing employee, does her job well, but she hits on every single one of these bullet points. And I will constantly hear people say, "Oh, she's got a resting bitch face. I don't want to approach her." And it's like, no, you guys, she's amazing. She's got the sweetest soul, and all because she just sits and listens and observes and processes. And I appreciate that about her.
The resting thinking face.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what it is.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, we should rebrand it. RTF.
I like that so much better.
I think I have it too sometimes.
Well, and I tell people all the time when talking about this topic, like one of my very best friends is a introvert. And, on Fridays when I'm like, let's go to happy hour. And for the longest time, I didn't know, like, she would never go. And there was a point where I was like, what is going on? Well, when I learned more about introverts and all, it's like, oh, she needs to rest. So she's good for Sunday bottomless mimosas, but Friday afternoon, after she has worked all week with meetings and everything else, she needs a nap, and that's okay.
Yeah,
I think that's really interesting too. I'd be curious, Emma, if you have any like thoughts on this. So we all know Katie and I are both extroverts, and I am an extrovert of an extrovert. Like, I will talk to anyone and everyone. But when I have been out doing something all day, I want you to leave me alone. Like I'm definitely an extrovert, but I also feel like I really internally process things, especially when it comes to like heavy things or hard things. I'm much more of an internal processor. And then, like I said, when I'm tired and I've been like talking to people all day long, at some point I'm like, okay, I'm coming home, I'm sitting on the couch, don't talk to me, don't like, I just need to recharge myself. So I wonder if there's like a little introversion in all of us that we really just need to like spend time with ourselves sometime too.
Yeah, I think everybody's on the spectrum of introversion to extroversion, and everyone sometimes needs alone time. Like, just because you're an extrovert does not mean that, I think we could do a whole thing on extroversion too. Like, don't just assume that because somebody's extroverted, they always want to go out somewhere and do something, because that's not very nice to assume. Everyone needs alone time, even extroverts, even you, Jenna. Okay, I've had jobs where there were frequent meetings, like every single day, big meetings with lots of people, big groups. I hate that so much. It is mentally draining. It's very difficult because if you're an introvert and you go into that space, it's easy for you to get overshadowed by your more extroverted colleagues. And it becomes very challenging to assert your ideas because it's just moving so fast, and nobody's, especially if an extrovert is running the meeting, they just move right on and they don't take a pause to ask someone who hasn't spoken yet, oh, hey, do you have something to add? So that can be very challenging. Networking, small talk, yeah, we find that to be draining and uncomfortable. That's all about initiating conversations and being at social events. That can be very draining, especially after a full day of work, like Katie said. Teamwork, it's not that we're not good at teamwork and collaboration. In fact, we're very good at it, but we just may need more time to process the information so that we can contribute in a very thoughtful way. So quick brainstorming sessions, impromptu things, not really my preferred method. But if Katie or Jenna put something in our group chat and they say, hey, Emma, when you have time, think about this, that's golden, because then I can actually do that when I have time to be alone and think. And then I might put something really good in the chat. But if you just put me on the spot, I probably won't be able to do it.
Emma, that's so interesting because one of my former bosses who was an extrovert, like if I would just, or an introvert, if I would just pop into her office, first of all, like even the time of day, but if I would send her a note and be like, hey, Shelly, do you have 5 minutes? Here's what I need to discuss. I felt like she showed up better when I came in because I prepared her. Like I did the work that was needed to do to have the conversation with her.
Yeah. Introverts love to be prepared, and we love to have a chance to think about our ideas and what we want to contribute beforehand, because that gives us a little bit more confidence to actually share the ideas quicker once we're in the place where we're actually talking with you. The last one here, I just wanted to say that this sucks. Oftentimes, promotion recognition happens quicker for extroverts because introverts, first of all, are less likely to seek the self-promote, like they're less likely to self-promote and then seek the recognition for their achievements. So sometimes I think introverts get hindered in the career ladder. We assume that our work will speak for itself. Just like in school, everyone had to get graded and that worked well for us, okay? So I assume that my work will speak for itself. And so I, have tended to not actively seek out those opportunities for advancement because I think, oh, someone has noticed that I'm working really hard.
Yeah, I think just too, not just advancement, but like stretch projects. And,
Yeah.
when I was talking to the SHRM chapter this past week or a couple weeks ago, we do, like, we look around the room and we're like, oh, there's an extrovert in the back of the room, like, oh, pick me, pick me. And what we really need to do is, make that scan. Who has the skills? Who has the capacity? Who has the desire to take on these projects and not just give it to the loudest voice in the room? I mean, we see that in school too. When you think about the kids sitting in the front row with their hands, thrown up, it's like, yeah, there's introverts probably sitting in the middle of the room that have the answer if we would just give them a second to answer.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. All right. So let's talk about creating an inclusive workspace. How can we fix this? So this is for those of you who are extroverts, or if you're a leader, if you have a team, I'm going to give you some tips for creating that inclusive workspace. So first, tips for the introverts in the room. I don't know if we have any, but you can self-identify. Leverage your listening skills. So we excel at active listening. So use that to your advantage in meetings and conversations. Do what you do. Ask thoughtful questions. Demonstrate that you value input from other people. That is really just such gold when it comes to interpersonal relationships. People love to be listened to. Like I said earlier, plan and prepare. So prepare for the meetings and presentations in advance. If you have a clear outline or you have some notes about things you definitely wanted to say, it is going to be so much easier for you to actually speak up and express your ideas more effectively. This is big. Set boundaries. This goes for everyone in all situations at all times, but for introverts especially, you need to communicate to your boss, to your coworkers, that you need downtime. Communicate your boundaries. Tell them when you're available for meetings, when you need focused work time. I, recently I started kind of blocking out some time on my calendar, making sure that I had time for my, I call it my deep work, because I really do need to sit down and be alone sometimes so that I can get a bunch of stuff done. When it comes to networking, I have lots to say about this. Introverts can network. We're not incapable, but you may want to rethink how you network. So instead of attending a bunch of networking events that have, 50 people in the room, maybe choose just a few that align with your interests. Or maybe you could reach out individually to people on LinkedIn and do one-on-one connections. Those are a little easier for us. So focus on building those deeper connections with a more select group of people instead of going to those large events. Develop your personal brand. We talk about this all the time, but you can showcase your expertise, your thought leadership through written communication. This is often where introverts shine, with written communication. So you could have a blog, you could do, LinkedIn posts about things that you feel particularly confident about. Contribute to your industry publications or whatever. Those are all things that help people understand that you are a thoughtful person that can add a lot to a conversation if given the time.
I think that's a really smart way to have an introvert kind of contribute, is through written word. Even if it's like sending somebody an email of like, hey, we had this meeting and I had this thought. And I know sometimes people feel like it's extra, or you're like reopening ideas or something, but like having an additional thought to add in, even as an extrovert who processes things quick like that, but like having that extra thought even after, a day after, 2 days after, will get my brain going again, and really be helpful. So I think that written word, blogs, LinkedIn posts, things like that are a really great way to be able to see the deep thought of an introvert.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, extroverts. This one's for you. I feel like I'm like that person. I've been waiting to say this all summer long. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so practice your active listening. So when you are listening to an introverted colleague or friend, make a conscious effort to really actively listen, give them your full attention, ask those follow-up questions, leave some space in the conversation. You don't have to fill every quiet moment. Sometimes introverts like to pause in between sentences so that, I often feel like I really think about the sentence that I'm going to say before I say it. So sometimes I have little pauses in my speech. That's okay. I just did it. Encourage that equal participation. So in those meetings, in those group discussions, try to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. That means you may have to pull it out a little bit, encouraging those quieter people to share their thoughts and ideas. You may have to say, Emma, do you have any thoughts on this before we move on? I want to make sure that I get your voice. That's really helpful. And it actually, you know, introverts may be sitting there going, yeah, I think I do kind of have something to contribute here, but I haven't really heard a pause on the conversation in order to interject myself. And we often won't do that. We won't interject. We won't interrupt other people. We won't say, oh, wait, I have something to say. Because if it just moves on, we'll just be like, okay, well, I guess they didn't want me to talk. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. This is a place for extroverts to pay attention to body language again. And this is something that like I have had to hone in. And in the last year, I feel like I finally figured it out. But like I even I will have something to say and I can look around a table of people and be like, you have something to say. You just haven't said it yet. I can see it on your face. And I will direct it toward like, hey, Emma, it looks like your brain is thinking something. Like, what do you have in your head? You know, it doesn't have to be a perfect opening, but you can even say like, raise your hand and be the person who's trying to speak and then be like, I actually just wanted to throw it to Emma because she's been quiet over there for a second. And just trying to like really read a person. And if they don't have anything to say, the worst thing is that they're like, oh no, I'm good. You're like, okay, great. Just wanted to make sure.
Good
I've got
point.
a question. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go for it.
I've got a question on that because, and I'm obviously the extrovert. And so for you, Emma, is it more comfortable to have the pause and kind of be called on? Because I also have seen in meetings where when I have paused and like, hey, do you have anything to add? Then it almost flusters them more just because they don't want to speak in front of the whole group versus what's your thoughts on the follow-up after the meeting? You know, or making sure that there's that one-on-one follow-up to go back to your point of having those one-on-one intimate conversations of, hey, I want to make sure that your voice is heard, anything to share and make it more comfortable for them. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. So, okay, I have a couple things to say about this. One is that even introverts have to learn to talk in front of a group. I mean, if it's someone young in their career, you may have to work with them a little bit if you're in a position where you can kind of mentor somewhat. That pause has to be, I mean, introverts have to be able to eventually learn to express their ideas, even in front of a group of people. It's just part of life. It's part of working. It's part of, being able to contribute. However, that can be difficult for someone, especially at the beginning of their career, if they're not used to it yet. So what I would say is you have to have a read on that person. So if you've seen them get flustered in the past, you may want to ask for their thoughts either before or after the meeting, but in a one-on-one capacity or even through email, again, like giving them the opportunity to contribute via written medium. But eventually that person is going to have to be able to contribute to a meeting at some point, and giving them the space to do that is really good. Another thing I'll say is that sometimes extroverts tend to move so fast that, especially in a meeting where it's like, oh, before we move on, do you have anything? And it's in such a way that it's like, you made it feel like I had to talk so fast, and I don't want to do that. So it's okay, like I said, to let things breathe, to have some quiet moments in a meeting, in a group discussion, whatever. It's okay to let it breathe. That's what introverts need sometimes in order to fully express their ideas. We don't want to feel like you're going to interrupt us if we start talking.
I feel like, Mandy, one of the things that I've done is said to somebody like, hey, I want to slow us down for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those words actually letting an introvert know that you have a space and it's not just that quick, like, oh, wait, fit it in, is where you can help. So like, hey, I just want to slow us down for a second, make sure that everybody can contribute, that we hear everybody's voice. Is there anything you want to add before we get too far carried away? Not before we move on, because the move on just kind of automatically tells somebody like, oh, what you have to say isn't that important. We're ready to move to the next thing. But just knowing that, creating that space to slow down.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, because yes, the words move on, make it feel like we've already really got all the information we need. I'm just kind of giving you the courtesy of letting you say something. We don't really need you to say it, but you know, so you're totally right. Let's slow down. Let's make sure that we've thought this through all the way. That's really helpful language. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, the employee I'm talking about is new to the profession and also new to the role. So it's just, there's a lot of, I mean, it's growth for me too. So I appreciate it.
Yes, that mentorship will help, you know, giving them the opportunity to beforehand, I would say even, yeah, like before the meeting, if they know what it's about, and you should always know what a meeting is about before you have it, to ask them beforehand to gather their thoughts. That way they know, you know, there will be an opportunity for them to speak and they will be able to look at their notes when they do so. Yeah, and this goes really well into the next point that I had, which is respecting different work styles. Understand that those people might prefer to work independently. They might prefer to work quietly. So respect that need, especially if you are in an office setting, for that solitude, and avoid those unnecessary interruptions of, you know, if they've set aside for their deep thinking, their deep work, to be interrupted in that really, really stinks. So, provide advance notice. This goes to what you were saying, Mandy. When scheduling meetings, when you're scheduling brainstorming sessions, provide advance notice to those people so that they can prepare and contribute better. Because if they just have to be put on the spot in the middle of the meeting, you're not going to get much out of them. And then create opportunities for written input. Email, Teams, Slack, whatever it is. Create those opportunities where introverts can share their ideas and feedback in a way that's comfortable for them. So they can actually think about, okay, what are my points here? Okay, well, I'm just going to put it in here. And then, you know, when you get to that meeting, if you feel like they don't want to talk, you can always say, oh, Emma sent over before the meeting these thoughts, and I just want to make sure everybody had a chance to read these because these are great, you know. Give them that opportunity to have the stage for a moment, and they can expand on their ideas if they want to. Okay, resources. Katie, the one, oh, you have it. Good. How to be an introvert in an extrovert world. It is an extrovert's world, you guys.
It is. So Mandy, I like went back to my bookshelf as soon as you were talking about your newer employee. This is a game changer book for me. Like I read it, and then I like personally called like 5 people who are introverts, and I apologized to them. There's a chapter, how to help extroverts understand you better. Like it is bookmarked for me. And I read this book for the first time like 6 years ago. And I will go back and pull it all the time. And it starts with talking about, you know, the show Friends. And it's like, you know, when we look at the show Friends, we think, well, everyone's a wild extrovert. And it's like, no, no, no. They just don't make TV shows about introverts because us extroverts don't want to watch people just casually sitting on the couch reading a book. But
What's that title again? Sorry. What?
you're good. How to be an introvert in an extrovert world. It's by Michelle Connelly. It is such a good book. Such a good book. I think I recommend it probably conservatively 4 to 5 times a month. It's just so good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually haven't read that one, Katie. I need to read it. I added a couple others that I've read. Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And then there's one called Introvert Power, Why Your Inner Life is Your Hidden Strength. That's a good way to think about introverts, is that we have a very, very rich inner life, but we don't always express it. So those are all good resources for both the introverts and the extroverts who want to be more inclusive. Any thoughts?
Hi, ladies. Good morning. This is Lauren. I just wanted to say thank you because I feel like I am perceived as an extrovert often because I do flourish in a social setting, but I have not always given myself like the space and time to express those deep thoughts and to kind of show like my own thought leadership in different ways. And I think this conversation has really inspired me, and I'm definitely going to read that book about introvert power because I would like to be able to show a little bit more of that side of myself. And yeah, like the social stuff is awesome, but like having a little bit more attention put to that like deep thinking, I think is kind of what I'm missing in my life. So thanks for this useful conversation.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank
Uh,
you very much.
I would say I'm also a closeted introvert that often gets mistaken for an extrovert. And I've always suspected that, but the things you shared today really resonated with me. Like, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. But I think I've trained myself to be more extroverted because of all the things that, like you said, it's an extrovert's world. You get ahead faster, and I kind of had to fake it. And
Yeah.
it's been a long time of training myself to to at least appear as an extrovert. But I that Friday happy hour that you were talking about, like that is, I almost never plan anything on a Friday. My husband has golf league on Friday, and it's my favorite night. I can just go home from work and lay on the couch with the dogs, and I don't have to talk to anybody, and it's glorious.
I love that. Tracy, you may be an ambivert. There actually is a word for people who are a little bit more in the middle of the spectrum, and they
Yeah.
call them ambiverts. So you may be that. Also, I used to say, like, even through college, I would say I'm a learned extrovert.
Yeah.
I've just recently I just decided I don't. I'm just going to embrace what I am, and there are many strengths to introversion, so you don't have to pretend.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say we've started to Jenna and I, and Emma when she's there, when we start doing training, like we will start with, who are introverts in the room, who are extroverts in the room, because one, it gives us that awareness to like, okay, make sure that we give John a voice because he's not going to just speak up. It also helps us like, it's so funny. We just finished a 2-day training with City of Lenexa, and so many of them were introverts that Jenna's and my galvanizing heart were like, come on, we're going to slowly pull it out of you. So, but knowing that they're all introverts was really helpful. And so we'll kind of understand who's in the room. And so we'll actually lead with that question. Like, how do you identify yourself? Do you identify yourself more of an introvert or an extrovert? And then that kind of, it also, I think, helps the room get some awareness. So it's like, oh, okay. And then I will also tell people, like, first of all, I'm sadistic, so I really love awkward silence. But it also lets the introverts in the room know, like, we're gonna pause. Like, I'm totally good with awkward silence. And so we'll just wait until everyone's comfortable speaking. And in our one of our other Lenexa classes, like I really feel like when we let that bubble, people will eventually speak, but there's some process of it. And so Jenna and I have to like almost sit on our hands because we want to fill the space. But I think it really helps us to even lead with how do you identify yourself?
Yeah. And I think even too, Katie, like not only just like, hey, we like awkward silence, but like we are going to take a minute here and literally putting on a timer during some of our trainings and saying, we're going to take a minute. We're going to let everybody process this. And then we're going to speak. Nobody speak for a minute. Like, and really just being really intentional in that. So that because when we know we have a group of introverts, it's easier for them to be able to process in that way. And then the small groups for them is way more effective than the bigger groups. And we've even found that if we put them in small groups first, so pairs of 2 or 3, and then we bring them all back as a group, the more extroverted person in the small group can then be the speaker for the introverted group, right? And it allows them to be comfortable and process their thoughts in a smaller container than having to do it out in front of 25 people.
Yeah, good point.
Hey.
Is this one of your awkward silence moments?
Gonna say with that healthy pause. Thank you all so much for joining. Emma, thank you for doing this. I know every time we talk about this topic, I feel like I learn more. So I appreciate you sharing this with everybody. So with that, we will see y'all around soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, ladies.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everyone.
You.